So where should I use the general chat for that?
Yep, you can pop them right in the chat.
Okay, so this is for the petition, and for the GoFundMe. Okay, so this is for the GoFundMe.
Thank you.
Of course, no problem.
All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and open up the room, okay? Welcome back for a rather late evening, or depending on where you are, possibly very early morning at the Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference. We are joined by Claudia Sparrow, who is the producer and director of Maxima, which is the documentary that a lot of us just watched, but hopefully you watched yesterday and today while it was available to our conference attendees. And Claudia has graciously agreed to hang out and answer questions and help us process this film, because it takes some processing. So attendees, put your questions in the chat box and we'll give them to Claudia. And I'll just kick it off with a couple of questions that I'm curious about. So to start with, Claudia, how did you get involved with this project?
Hi, Andrea. Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me again. And thank you for everybody who actually took the time to watch the film. We really appreciate your support. So I am Peruvian, and I had been living in the US for many years when in 2016, Maxima won the Gofundme Environmental Prize, which, if you're not familiar with it, is equivalent to the Nobel Peace Prize. But this is for environmental activists. And a Peruvian journalist wrote a piece about Maxima for a magazine. An article, and I came across that article, and it was the first time I had heard of Maxima and what her fight, what she had been through, and I was so shaken by it that I just couldn't let it go. You know, I literally couldn't sleep at night thinking, I'm a Peruvian filmmaker. This is happening. There must be something I can do to help share Maxima's voice. You know, I thought obviously film can hopefully give her a larger platform to her mission. And I originally thought maybe I can make a short film, something. And basically that is how it all started. I reached out to her team and we started the conversation.
So that's my next question, is because a lot of times when people want to do something, they don't know how to get started. Now, Susan's not that kind of person. She just starts making phone calls. But how did you know who to talk to, how to make the connections? What was your process for getting involved so you could help?
You know, and I understand, and I actually share this feeling. I actually would love to share it with anybody, because I was that person. Like, I was a filmmaker focused on fiction, and I had never done anything closely to activism, and I felt clueless. I felt like, yeah, you know what, I'm really not qualified. I should just probably let somebody else do it. Or I was thinking like, maybe, you know, I'll just forget about it. You know, I mean, I think these are like just normal reactions that we have when we're encountered with realities that hit us so hard. And so, you know, I just decided to like, let me do something, like a little something at least. And I reached out to the journalist, who then put me in touch with Maxima's lawyer. Okay. And, you know, I just started like processing the information. And again, you know, I gave myself a small goal, which is like, okay, I'm going to talk to the lawyer and then discuss the possibility of making a show, or maybe just an interview, you know, just talk to Maxima. And maybe, you know, they won't let me, maybe, or, you know, something, and it won't happen. But I think it's important. I would like to remind everybody who feels that way, is that we all actually have a lot of power to do something. Like every small action counts. So they never feel discouraged. And again, I can totally relate to that because I that's where I'm coming from. Like, and I thought actually maybe I can be helpful because I am not an expert. So I'm going to be approaching the project with, you know, as a learner too, like a student per se. Yeah. So again, you don't need to be an expert, I think, to do something.
That's really good advice, because I think that's how we talk ourselves out of a lot of things.
Of course, right.
So what was your experience of doing the interviewing and gathering the footage? And you know, tell us what it was like to be there and part of it.
Of course.
Down there.
Right. So actually the first challenge was talking to Maxima's lawyer in Peru, because she is Mirta. She's featured in the film. She's a human rights lawyer, and as we portray, she has. It's an incredibly hard job. She works for this NGO that is underfunded. They have way too many, you know, more cases and complex cases that they can handle. And you know, Mirta is she works there. She's also a teacher. She's also a mother. So she's just finding a time where she was at the office, because I am calling as Claudia, nobody, she doesn't know who I am, like we have no direct connection. It took months for me to actually find her in the office, for her to have the time to talk to me. And then she's like, okay, let me talk to Maxima and call me back in 2 weeks. But of course, in 2 weeks, she was not at the office, so other 2 weeks ago, you know, so many times I felt like, okay, this is it. This is just not going to happen. So that was the main challenge. Then obviously having Maxima and her family agree for us to come visit, and then organize the logistics, because the mine company had blocked every entrance to Maxima's house. So the closest, normally, before they put the fence around the house and close the entrances to her house, you could actually just take a drive from the city of Cajamarca to her house in 2 hours. Because now the entrances have been blocked, you have to go literally like through the Andes for 8 hours. Like, it's not even a road, it's like a dirt path. So, you know, to just, you know, find the logistics to do that. And then, you know, Maxima, and then when you get to the closest checkpoint to her house, this is still a 20-minute walk. And this is like freezing temperatures. It's almost 15,000 feet altitude. So it's just walking is so hard, and we're having to carry equipment, water, food supplies. So all of that, that was the next challenge. And then not even knowing if we're going to get through the gate, because they decide rather than if they want to let you through or not. So that never changed. That was always the logistical challenge of getting to Maxima.
And it looks like from the end of the film, it's still a challenge.
It is still a challenge. The pandemic, actually, I talked to Maxima recently, and she told me that one silver lining of the pandemic is that there are less mining employees around. So they've actually enjoyed some freedom moving around. But normally, that is not the case. They are still there deciding, you know, who goes through or not through the security checkpoint.
Did you feel like just angry for months while you were producing? Like, how do you fight the anger so that you can stay clear-headed?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. You know, it's impossible not to become very emotional, you know, and experience all the emotions, the anger, the frustration, the pain, you know, fear sometimes too for the family. I think that it's Maxima who's always given me the strength, because I felt like every time I was next to her, like I had nothing to complain about. You know, I feel like I've been like so lucky to be given certain resources that have made my life in a way a lot easier, and just given me possibilities that, you know, Maxima hasn't. And if I was scared, like I couldn't imagine how scared she must have been, and, you know, continues to be, even though she's incredibly brave and courageous. So I felt like, you know, she has this just energy to her that just, I don't know, I think she's like a magical woman. Like, she just recharges you, and inspires you. So it was, anytime I was with her, like I was just empowered. That's a quality she has.
It's pretty compelling. So every documentary ends up with a bunch of footage on the floor. Well, that's old terminology, but footage that didn't make it because it wasn't right for the final piece. Are there any stories that you wish you had time or the flow to tell that weren't in there?
Yes, she has been fighting the company since 2011, and I only started documenting her on 2016. And early on, obviously there were a lot of encounters that were not recorded or documented. Like Maxima didn't have access to a cell phone or a camera or anything like that. So it was so of course I wish I had been there. But even while we were documenting her journey, there was one particular moment that I really wish we had been there to document, because it was when she had written a letter through her lawyer to asking Newmont directly to stop the abuse. And they mailed her back a response. And I wasn't there to document that, because it also happened to be a day, Mirta brought it to her in person to her house, because Maxima had it in her hands for weeks, but she cannot read, so she didn't know what it said. And then it was incredibly, I was told that it was, the weather was terrible that day. A relative of Maxima was very sick, and it took them hours for the security to let them out to get her medical attention. So, that was one moment that I always, I really wish I had been there to document, because it would have also portrayed, it was kind of like a perfect example of what they go through.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
That what they go through, what they've been going through, all these years.
Mm-hmm. Susan Crow's asking a question that I was really wondering about this as well, since Newmont is the biggest gold miner in the world. So we are all obviously getting exposed to some of their gold, unless we're only buying fair mined or clean gold from someplace. Right. But she's asking, how many other families and communities do you think Newmont is doing this to? Did you get any insight into that during the process of your research?
Yes, unfortunately, many. And that is one of the things that shocked me personally, because when I first started looking into it, they've been there for over 20 years. And as I was looking for, I obviously wanted to approach it very objectively, like see, okay, their side, like what has been happening. And there is a lot of claims from when they first start operating of families, communities that had the similar complaints, especially having their water, their land contaminated, and they were also trying to get justice. And the company was operated in the same way, like they were, using filing lawsuits against them, intimidating them, harassing them, and eventually they succeeded, and they will back down and withdraw the lawsuits. They wouldn't want to talk about it. Some settled. So that's another thing that was incredibly remarkable about Maxima's story, that she's the first one that didn't back down. And the company was not expecting that either. So they really weren't, because they had successfully managed to really intimidate their way, use these tactics to get people not to complain. And that's what again, I found incredibly compelling about Maxima.
It's hard to be a bully that gets your way all the time and then suddenly doesn't. So they're still bullying pretty extensively. Right. When you were in those were you there personally getting some of that footage in the courtroom?
Yes, the trials, the court sessions in Lima, I was there. Sorry. I was there. Luckily, they did allow us to go into the courtroom when she was having the sessions for the verdicts for her criminal case.
So when you head into a courtroom with a bunch of lawyers, there's always a lot of side conversation and knowledge about who knows what. I would imagine nobody expected the judges to rule in her favor, and that the judges were probably at some risk from the government, weren't they? Did you have any insight into that?
I do. Like, I mean, again, I cannot. I don't have actual proof. So, as in like evidence, material evidence. I did hear testimonies of for example, the mining company, reaching out to government officials, kind of like requesting to stop giving attention to the case. Unfortunately, I cannot tell a lot more about that because, it was confidential, some information. But I feel like there were also just some suggestions. One of the reasons that they originally the judges were going to rule actually against Maxima, but they, given how like the presence that she got from press internationally, locally, that they were kind of like taken by that, and they decided, okay, let's reconsider. At least that is one of the Maxima's lawyer, Mirta, that's one of the things that she thought may have happened too.
Is there enough attention still being paid to her? Because it would seem to me that the risk would be that now that she won her case, mm-hmm. that people would move on to something else, and then Newmont could just sort of wait it out. So what's being done, if anything, or do you know, to keep the attention high beyond this film, which is a huge part of that, I'm sure?
So the case that she won was, in a way, a criminal case. So now she still has civil cases that are ongoing in Peru, and they are expected to take many years. But it's exactly what you say. I think the company can afford to wait. And a lot of what, I would say one of their tactics is also the harassment on a psychological level. It's incredibly exhausting. Like I've been following Maxima for 3 years, and I feel like, oh my God, I don't think I can like just keep doing this anymore, because it's such a strong, it takes a toll on you. So I cannot even imagine what it's been like for the family. So they're aware of that, and again, the gold is there, so they can afford to wait, even if it's 25, 50 years or longer. So unfortunately, I think they're aware of that. And then there is also in terms of the legal cases, there's also one lawsuit that Maxima's lawyers are hoping that goes through here in the U.S. Because obviously that is, I think, or they think, is going to be the most powerful call out, in a way, to them. Mm-hmm. The best way to get them accountable.
Yeah. So Ana, and I don't know if this one's Ana Bogota or Ana California, but it's one of our Anas, wants to know how we can help spread the word and share the film. She wants to know if it's available for individuals to rent or purchase, and how can we get the word out there?
Yes, thank you. So right now, we are working on 2 levels, like traditional distribution. We are hoping that the film is available to the general public in the next few months. As of right now, we have educational licenses available, but people are also, we really encourage anybody, individuals, if you're part of an organization or a business, you please contact us, and we would love to help you organize a community screening of the film. Because that has actually been very successful and a very powerful tool that people have been using, and it just keeps the conversation going, and that has been great. So again, we're always looking for partners. Feel free to reach out. We would love to work with you to continue spreading Maxima's fight and her mission.
Yeah. We talked earlier, Claudia, that I had the chance to ask the Newmont sustainability officer about Maxima, and the question was, will you stop harassing her? And the answer was, we will continue our engagement. And we, in the jewelry industry, look at all of the standards and the best standards, and a lot of these standards that are held up by the large-scale mines are made within the industry. And in the UN Human Rights Standard, it says on resettlement that you have to get consent. But I think that is the only standard that says you have to get consent. So they continue to do the harassment with, is that correct? They're continuing to harass Maxima?
Yes, as far as we know, the fight continues. In the past few months, because of the pandemic, and this is what the family has told me, they haven't experienced a lot of presence because in Peru at least there has been a lot of lockdowns. So I'm imagining part of the operations have just naturally stopped because of that. So they have enjoyed like a little bit of peace on that end, but the legal fight continues. And Maximo was telling me actually that they are farming on the side that the company continues to claim that is theirs. And so she was afraid, like I have no idea, they are probably going to come and destroy those crops. We'll see, because right now they're not visible because they're growing. So they live with that constant fear and concern.
At one point in the movie, you showed I forget her name right now, sorry, but it was one of the young young NGO women, and she was at a board, and she was actually documenting corporate.
Right, Miriam, yeah, yes.
Yes. Did they develop a framework to show not just Newmont's ownership, but what kinds of gold they deal in and to where? Because it makes me wonder, could we get Apple? They could be selling gold to electronics. They could be dealing in it heavily in NFTs, and it could also be the industry. But I would have to think there would be a way to bring the money end of these equations to Newmont and have more impact. Do you know if she got very far with that diagramming?
Unfortunately, what they focused on was specifically the control, because that is what what they needed, the information that they needed in order to put together the lawsuit. So I don't think that they pursued it or just focus on that area, and that is actually we did look into that. We talked to some experts, but nobody was able to tell us really clearly where the gold is, because some company, actually one employee from Yanacocha told us that they believed that it went to the US, but they didn't know exactly where it went. And actually that is an area that I'm still looking into now, because it's kind of like the next step, it's part of, it's very important, obviously, for next steps.
Yep. Yeah, that's where my mind goes too, is how do we sort that out so we can bring.
Right. And it's complex. It's not easy. It's obviously also not information that is very easily accessible.
How did you find out about the Mercury spill, and then how they afterwards were paying to buy back Mercury?
So that's actually, I hope I can make a documentary about that specific case, because it's so massive. When it happened, actually there was a claim or a lawsuit that came here to the US eventually, and it was horribly settled. The people that were affected basically got nothing, and that is why there is so much information about it, actually. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things that also really stood out when I started looking into Maxima's case, is that there was a lot of evidence, from the moment the company started operating, that showed that there was like this constant, clear evidences of violations of human rights, of environmental crimes. So that surprised me. Like, this is not secret, really. Like, it's been out there for so many years. How come they continue to get away with it? Like that was something that really shocked me. And the Mercury spill is one of the bigger examples. Like, if you really looked at everything that happened, it's just mind blowing that they basically got away with it. And this is like 20 years later, these basically people are still right now like suffering the consequences, dying out of mercury poisoning, and they are completely forgotten. Like, I went there in person, and it was one of the most devastating days of my life, because you can see them sick, and they are in such a remote area. They're forgotten. It was like a horror movie. Like, it was just horrific. And they're like, there's nothing really they can do, because they already settled. And just to give you an example, many of them signed these agreements that they didn't even know, like some couldn't even read, or and they were forced to sign, or they were in English, so they didn't know, and they were signing these settlements, so they basically lost their chance to really look for justice.
Those settlements can be overturned when they're proven to be unjust.
Yes, Mirta, actually, I know that she was trying to work on some of the cases that had a chance of getting some sort of justice. But unfortunately, it was very complicated because of the terms that they agreed to. But, again, this is just, an example of unfortunately, some of the devastations that have happened, and for years. And they seem to get away with it.
And Maxima, so there is a court case coming to the U.S. with Maxima?
Yes, so her legal team in the U.S. filed a lawsuit. It's basically what we cover at the very end of the film. The judge ruled in favor of the company, so they appealed. They lost that appeal a few months ago, citing, it was actually very interesting. The judge claimed that there was enough evidence showing that Maxima can actually have a fair trial in Peru, which is actually ironic because recently the Peruvian Congress was dissolved out of how much corruption there was. Right. So that has played in their favor, and her legal team has used all that evidence to show the court again, hey, no, look at how much corruption is actively there is right now. And so they've appealed again. So, they are hopeful that this time the judge will reconsider and that, the trial will move forward here in the U.S.
Do you know which court that's in?
Pennsylvania, the same.
So what's your next project?
I have a couple that are in development. So, I cannot share a lot about them, but they are about very strong, amazing women. So I hope that I'm able to move forward. I would love both of them, but maybe at least one.
That's inspirational.
Thank you.
I do want to say that we've been putting in some Gofundme links for you because we know what it's like to be grassroots, and you've made this incredible film. And
thank you.
We hope that everyone viewing can help out and with the film and help you out with that. And I do want to mention tomorrow, I hope you can join, Claudia, because we're talking about large-scale mining and indigenous rights. And I feel like we're just in this area of the jewelry industry beginning to talk about resettlement. And I really this year want to focus on letting people understand what that means. But in hearing the voice of the people that have been so affected and indigenous voices, it's extremely powerful. And we all need to be aware of what's happening not just in Peru, in America. We're going to hear from somebody in Canada that's a First Nations person there, and it's everywhere. The land from underneath people just can be taken away. And Maxima is so inspiring.
Yeah, and I think, Susan, what you're saying is really important because most people, that's what I found out, myself included, I had no idea what it took to get gold. Never crossed my mind. I just assumed it was done responsibly. How bad could it really be? I had no idea. So, and I found that most people to this day, they are unaware. I'm sure, I don't know, in your experience, maybe even jewelry, people that work in the jewelry industry, maybe they didn't know themselves. So I am very encouraged that these conversations are happening now. And people are now making an effort to want to be informed and support more responsibly sourced gold.
People are becoming more aware, but what we're seeing, I feel as a jeweler, is that we're being told by the large-scale mining companies that have so much money that they're the ones doing it responsibly, that we just had a Mercury panel, that the Mercury problems are coming from the artisanal and small-scale miners. And, and then you see in your film, the mercury spill on the street and what large scale mining is. So that's really, we're being told that the way without child labor is large scale mining. So let's look at that. They're the responsible ones. So they'll cite, the artisanal small scale actors, and they'll say we're the ones doing it right. So this is what we're hearing. And when you see a film like Maxima, it is like an awakening. And it's awakening to almost propaganda.
Right.
Well, yeah, there's so much money there. When you have that much money, I mean, there isn't an artisanal mine in the world that can muster enough damage individually with mercury to do the kind of damage that the large-scale mines can do with a single accident.
That's one of the things that really upset me was the fact that these companies, specifically like a transnational like Newmont, they do have the money, they have the resources to at least do this better, like in a scale where like it's a lot less harmful, if not harmful. I mean, again, that's a different conversation, but I think that they have the means to not do this amount of damage, and they don't. Like that really upset me. And I also found that I was again shocked with the massive disconnect between the people that work, that are the decision makers, and the people that like Maxima who are on the ground. Like it's just two different universes. And I think that is also important to address, because if you just think of Maxima, and people like Maxima, of these people that are like so far away, that are unrelated, that we cannot connect. I think that's the bigger problem. Like where it's all connected, like it's affecting every and each of us directly.
It's true. Well, that Indigenous land rights and large scale mining session is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we hope everybody will be there bright and early tomorrow for the first session, because that's a perfect segue from the film tonight to start really talking about this as a group and figure out how we can have some impact. So, Claudia, what do you think Maxima would, if she were talking to us now and we were asking her, what should we do? What do you think she'd tell us?
I think she would really be thankful for the support. She's always incredibly moved, because it's easy for her sometimes to remember that or forget that she realized that the amount of support that she has, because she's in a remote area. She's living in this harassment and very tense scenario, but she's always very moved and very inspired, encouraged by the support. So she will be very thankful. And I think in very simple words, all she's just looking is for justice, for her and everybody, really every citizen of the world, because everybody has a right to have access to clean water and to live a peaceful life. It's just we're really talking about basic human rights, and that's what she's always saying, really. Like no economic power should be above our human rights, and it's up to us to say we're not going to let this happen.
Right. Well, and it goes back to something Susan was saying yesterday in our session when we opened, that it's one thing to not know something, but once we know something, right, then we have a responsibility to act on it. So now we know.
And as a jewelry industry, we use up 80% of the gold in our jewelry, and U.S. is the largest consumers. And Newmont is an American company.
That's right.
So how much responsibility does the jewelry industry hold to Maxima?
Yeah.
A lot.
So we got to figure out how to get that word out there and bring some uncomfortable attention from our end. So I think sometimes people in the industry, and I've been in this industry a long time at the executive corporate level and independent, and I think sometimes people are afraid, but we'll hurt the jewelry industry if we talk about these things. And the reality is people are still going to want to buy jewelry. So let's just use our power as an industry to make things change, because people would be much more inclined to buy jewelry that they knew was responsibly produced.
Absolutely, I agree completely with you. I actually, when I first learned about the impact of gold mining, I was like, that's it. I don't want to know. I cannot stand even looking at gold. But then I started learning that there are more responsible jewelers. That there is a way to use recycled gold. We don't have to go so drastic as or demonize gold. There are other options, and I think that I agree with your point. I think that people will be a lot more inclined to support responsible sourced gold, like jewelers that are actually that really show that they care and that they are fighting for the environment and for human rights. And I think it would actually be a plus. Yep,
Absolutely. Well, we are at the end of the evening, and just answering a question there. It's late enough in the day that I cannot multitask. But Claudia, you have a babysitter to let home, so we're going to end this session now. Thank you so much for producing this, for putting yourself in.
Thank you.
That's a gift, and for hanging out with us to discuss it tonight. Really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you both, Andrea and Susana. It's really been my pleasure, and I think it's what you're doing to bring awareness is I'm extremely thankful and hopeful, because I think this is the way, one step at a time, towards change and sustainability.
Absolutely. Well, we'll do our best.
Thanks for your film, and thank you for Maxima and her fight, and thanks for highlighting it and sharing it.
Yeah,
of course. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap for today. We will see you tomorrow. Come back for the morning sessions, and have a good night. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.